Welcome to another art, business, and marketing broadcast from Xanadu Gallery and BarneyDavey.com. I'm Jason Horejs, owner of Xanadu Gallery and publisher of Red.blog.com.
And I'm Barney Davey, art marketing advisor, art marketing author, and publisher of artbusinessblog.com.
And this is episode number 35, if you can believe that, of our ongoing series of art marketing broadcasts and hangouts on Google+. Today is Tuesday, December 9th, 2014. I would like to welcome you to this broadcast. Barney, it's great to be with you again.
Hi, Jason. Good to be with you again, as always. I'm wearing my holiday sweater here, courtesy of my wife, who reminds me to think of such things.
Absolutely. We are headed quickly into the holiday season, and I'm sure everybody is getting geared up for the holidays and hopefully selling some gift-sized artworks to their collectors and seeing some good activity that way. And it's great to be here. And this is always a fun time of year for art and for everything else that's going on. And Barney and I decided that we wanted to make this broadcast one of our favorites, which is to do the open Q&A. Usually we pick a topic and expound and expand upon that topic and take some of your questions in relation to it. But we always get questions that kind of fall outside of the topic. And so we like to, every once in a while, have an open episode where we'll take your questions and let you set the topics and try and respond to as many of those questions as we can. We've received quite a number of questions prior to the broadcast today, either through email or on our blogs. Barney had done a survey that I think we'll talk a little bit about today. And I have a new Q&A app on red.blog.com, and then many of you posted questions on Google+. So we've got a variety of sources for the questions that we're going to be taking today. But also you can ask questions live during the course of the broadcast by clicking on the Q&A box that you should see in your video window if you're signed in through Google. And we'll see those questions live and can take those during the course of the conversation today as well. So I think, Barney, we've got so much territory to cover, we better just dive in and start taking some questions. And we're not taking them in any particular order, and like I say, we're trying to get to as many as possible, so we'll just jump in and take the first question. And Barney, do you have one up that we could dive into first?
Yeah, hang on just a second. Here we go. I was looking around for the link to the survey while you mentioned it. From Dominic Giglio. Sorry if I mispronounced that, Dominic. The question is, in the current economic market, where does the art market stand? Are there many opportunities to sell to the general public? Can you talk specifics about art trends and what is selling right now? Modern art, landscape, portrait, historical, or Western? It's a great question. I think it's one of those questions that's kind of a global type of question, and in my opinion, artists shouldn't be looking too much globally. I think they should be looking individually. You're selling to a relatively small group of people. You know, if over the course of your career, you can have a collector base that's 500 or 1,000, that would be huge for most artists. A few hundred people can really make your career, so trying to worry about what the trends are is kind of not probably in your best interest. It's more along the lines of what kind of response you're getting back from targeted audience that you've selected. They're telling you, I like that work. It may not be landscapes, or it may not be, the rage of teal or pink or deep chrome colors or whatever. Anyway, I don't know that there's any trends right now. Jason, you might talk about a little bit about how that your gallery's doing. And
yeah, sure. And
well.
I agree with you, first of all, that I never like to worry too much about, is the business up or down, because it's constantly cycling. Of course, it is good to know that overall the economy is getting better and overall sales are picking up. It means that the environment that you're going into is a little bit easier to enter. It means that you might meet a little less resistance on pricing and those kinds of things. But I agree with Barney that when you're thinking about marketing and selling your artwork, you can't change those bigger global factors, and so you've got to just push forward and do your best and not worry about just show some persistence and not worry about what's going on in the broader art market. But as far as I think it's another question that artists always like to ask. What's selling right now? Is it landscapes? Is it wildlife or Western? And usually it seems to me that the natural tendency of an artist is to think that everything is selling except what I'm creating. So if you are an abstract artist, it seems like the landscape painters and portrait painters have it easy, and if you're a landscape artist, it's the abstract artists that are getting all the attention right now, and the trends are moving in that direction. And again, I would just kind of throw that out the window and not think too much about it. It's not going to do you any good. You're not going to change what you're doing. And as Barney said, if you've got, if you've found that niche market that's interested in your work, it doesn't matter what the trends are. You only have to have a few people buying your work. And I think that our gallery is probably a good example of that. Scottsdale's known as a Western and Southwestern market. We didn't want to do that, and so we did something different. And we don't appeal to the broader market here, but we have some very loyal collectors that work with us. And sometimes finding that niche and then really mining it can be far more effective than trying to meet the broader trends.
There's that old saying, there's riches in niches. So, think more locally. You might have a global audience, but you really have a very small audience. And in my opinion, that's a huge advantage for visual artists. If you're a musician or an author or an actor or a playwright, if you have a few hundred people who like what you do, you're dead in the water. You'll never make a career. Imagine being an author and selling 100 books or even 500 books. That would be considered a failure as far as a career goes. And I realize the price points are different. A book might be $20, and your piece of art might be $2,000. But nonetheless, you have a much smaller group of people that you need to pull into your circle of influence who want to buy from you. And the cool thing is that all the tools that somebody would use to sell to 10,000 books are the same tools that you use to sell to your few hundred to a couple thousand potential buyers of your work. So, look at the advantage and the bright side of this, and think about that word Jason used, niches. It really is important, in my opinion, in terms of just driving your success.
Barney, I've got a question here from the blog. This question comes from Marilyn Linderman. And I'm going to direct it specifically to you because it is a question about originals and prints. And she says, if you'd like to offer both prints and originals sold through a gallery, what would be an appropriate size edition of canvas giclée prints? So it's kind of a specific question, but I think a lot of people would be interested in the answer about the reproduction, the giclée market.
If you're in a gallery if I understand the question right, it's wondering what size art should I offer in a gallery that's presenting my work in print format. Am I getting that right?
Well, I think wanting to know, what the edition size would be.
The edition size, not the physical size. Thank you for clarification. Galleries love to sell editions. It helps them. It's a selling tool. But in the world of giclées, it doesn't make any sense to me. You're probably never going to get a gallery to buy in on this, but I will say, if you're going to do editions, keep them small, maybe 150, not more than 300. Or, my opinion is have open editions. Everybody knows that if this is a digitally created piece of art, that there's nothing that would keep you from making more of them, other
Your
than you
plates aren't going to
artificially.
wear out, or that there's not going to be any degradation in the reproduction from number 1 to number 1,000 or 10,000.
Right. If anything, they get better over time. Let's say you have an edition that's lasted several years. The likelihood is that the software, your computer, and the printer, and possibly the substrates and the materials that you put on afterwards, all improve. So ostensibly, your work could actually get better over time in a digital format because of the improvement in the tools and techniques that you have. So, artists are the only, visual artists are the only artists who artificially cap their income with limited editions. It doesn't make any sense to me. Can you imagine the Rolling Stones coming out with, well, we're only going to sell 1,000 albums. That's all. We're done. We're just going to go away. Or we're only going to show this movie in 100 movie houses. And it's same thing with selling out. Nobody ever says this artist, the New York Philharmonic sold 10 million copies of their latest CD, and therefore they sold out. That's absurd. So, but this is just my opinion. I'm totally against limited edition prints for most artists, and I've had some very vocal, heated conversations with other artists who are doing quite well in the print market with limited edition. So you're welcome to completely ignore my advice, like other artists are, and go for it and make a living at it. But if those artists who are generally doing that have a lot of art in the market, they're productive and prolific, and it really doesn't matter so much to them. But short answer to your question, if you're really trying to market it as a limited edition, keep it limited. Make it probably 100, 150, not more than 300.
Yeah, I would say go out and spend some time in some galleries and shop what other artists are doing in terms of edition size. And you're going to see, I mean, what Barney's saying is exactly right. The numbers are going to be all over the place because there's just no real reason for there to be any number at all. And you want to think about where am I going to be trying to distribute and sell these reproductions, and see what are the typical edition sizes in those galleries, and that's going to give you a kind of baseline. In my admittedly very limited experience and research in terms of looking at the Giclées, I've chosen not to carry them in my gallery, but I do, I'm out and about in galleries quite frequently. It's pretty common for me to see edition sizes of 50, 100, 150, 200, and it seems like they're just slowly starting to creep up and up as more and more artists realize that there's no reason to limit what they're doing. And obviously, as Barney said, there's some artists out there who are doing a limited edition of only 20,000 Giclées or whatever it is.
Well, yeah, Thomas Kincaid, then there's Terry Redland, who is a famous Americana artist that has a whole museum devoted to him, and he's a tourist attraction in South Dakota and beloved, and he sold limited editions, open editions, the same image in all kinds of different packages, and nobody ever hated on him for doing it. Because he managed it in some way or another. So there aren't any real exact easy answers to this. You have to do what you said, Jason, research so that you get a good feel for what's going on, and then put that through your own filters of what makes you feel good about it and how you can comfortably present this work and say, I stand behind it for these reasons, I'm limiting it for these reasons, or I'm keeping it open for these reasons. One of the things I say to artists is, if you want to go open edition, there's nothing stopping you from numbering it. You just don't have to put a limit on it. And I tend to believe that some of those, if you do that and you become popular and successful, that some of those numbers, especially if it's a really popular piece of art, will have some kind of weird collectible factor, like it's your birthday, or it matches the number of something that's in the print, or something oddball weird. Collectors feast on and focus on weird things, and all of a sudden something that it becomes scarce, even though there's a whole bunch of them, because it's got this particular number. It's we should probably move on. I could do a whole hour on limited edition.
I think you wrote a whole book about it, as a matter of fact.
And numerous blog posts.
Okay.
You want me to take one, or you got another?
Yeah,
one?
go ahead. We'll just switch off.
Okay. I'm just going to go down the line here. Terry Kresak, sorry again, Terry, if I'm mispronouncing your name. A recent poll in the UK indicated that landscape was the most popular subject to purchase. Do you have a feel for what is the most popular subject in North America? I will go out on a limb and say landscape. For those of you who don't know, I worked for nearly 20 years for Decor magazine, which went out to art and picture framing retailers worldwide, primarily in the U.S., and was considered the Bible of that industry for its nearly 135-year run. And during the 20 years I worked there, we surveyed our audience regularly, and one of the things we asked them was, what's selling the most? And landscapes were always number one. I believe they will continue to always be number one, because they're the safest thing. They fit in almost any decor. There's no explanation involved with what is that? That's a landscape. And it's probably landscapes without people sell better than those with people. But again, I wouldn't get too hung up on those global issues. You like landscapes, that's great. Just make yours distinctive and appealing in a way that nobody else is doing. That's how you become successful. Yeah,
I think that's really an important point. If you think about that, and of course the basis of this question, I think, is kind of the same basis as the question we addressed earlier, and that is, are people going to be interested in what I'm producing? Are they going to be interested in my abstract work or whatever it is? And I think you're right, Barney, that landscapes are going to be, they are perennially popular, but that there's also kind of a I don't know if you want to call it a virtuous circle there, or what kind of circle you want to call it, but there's more landscape selling because there's more landscape being produced by more artists, because there's more landscape being produced, and on and on and on. And so, yes, landscapes sell more, but it's also a far more competitive marketplace, because you're competing against many, many more artists. So your abstract contemporary work, or your very colorful figurative work, again, is going to potentially find a niche that you would not find if you were just selling yourself out and creating landscapes because you think that's what's going to sell.
Some artists do that, but a lot of times they're not signing their name to it, and they're just looking for commercial work with publishers or in the licensing market and that sort of thing. If it's something that you're going to put your name on and want to get into gallery level representation, go with the highest quality work and the most compelling work that you can make, that resonates with the greatest number of people and makes you feel good about it at the same time. If you can dial in all those factors, you're going to be successful, and the size of your work, the color scheme in your work, and the subject matter will be moot point. It's the other things that matter. People are not. This isn't a rational thing. People buy because they love it. You've made some connection with them, some cultural, artistic connection with them, that they want to take this piece of art that you've made and put it in their home or office and live with it. And that's what you're looking for. You're looking for that. Get inside somebody's head with what you're doing, and not mechanically making a piece of art that's got a mountain and a lakeside and some trees in it.
I've got a question. Again, this one comes from the blog, and it's actually two separate questions. One is by Gary, and I don't have a last name. and then the follow-up is by a photographer who I also don't have a name for. But the question is, it says, Jason and Barney, following your advice, I've made progress, and a couple of galleries are now showing my work, but I seem to be getting a similar response I received at art festivals. Lots of love, encouraging comments, and positive feedback, but few sales. My prices seem to be in line with artists of similar experience, quality of presentation, and recognition. And then the photographer's follow-up is, I'm living the same story, more or less. Would love to hear what you have to say about this. And I think this probably, I'm glad we got this question, because I think this probably speaks to a lot of artists who feel a little bit of the, the frustration that comes with, pouring your soul into creating this artwork and then going to great lengths to get it out there, to promote it, to show the work, getting good feedback, feeling like everything's kind of moving in the right direction. But then at the end of the day, the sales just aren't coming yet. And I can completely understand how frustrating that can be. And I wish that we could have Gary here so that we could ask some follow-up questions. How long have you been doing this? How much work are you producing? How much of it is out there? In the end, in my experience, regardless of all of the other factors, and I know a lot of artists will shudder to hear me say this, regardless of your quote-unquote talent or that kind of thing, in my experience, what makes the big difference is the number of pieces that you're getting out there in front of people and the amount of exposure that you're getting for that work. On the business side of this, it is very much a numbers game. The more eyeballs you have on your artwork, and the broader the exposure that you're getting, the more likely you are to reach that small niche that we talked about earlier, that it's going to fall passionately in love with your work and be willing to buy it. So you've just got to, saying I'm in a couple of galleries and it sounds like you're doing some shows, I would encourage you to keep at that, and to keep, if you're not selling right now, don't stop producing. Don't wait for the sales to come. Keep producing and building your inventory, and that gives you the capacity to go out and add another gallery to represent you. It gives you the capacity to go and participate in a few more shows. It gives you the ability to promote your work to your mailing list and those people who are following you personally. You just got to, it's a Herculean task to get the sales going, especially initially. But if you just every day are putting effort into that, over time, that cumulative effort builds up, and the sales start to come, and you've built some capital in terms of the goodwill among your galleries and your collectors, and over time the sales will come in. But they don't call it starving artist for nothing. It takes time to build that up, and I would just encourage you. It's those who get out there and move and shake even when the sales aren't coming, and who keep at it over the long term that are going to be the most successful.
It's the overnight success that took 10 years in the making. You mentioned something there, and a lot of these come back to the same thing. It's chipping away at something. Or laying a brick wall. It's one brick at a time, and you just can't go out and make a brick wall and throw it up in 10 seconds or 2 minutes, or if you're inexperienced, even in a couple of days, depending on the size of the wall, obviously. So that's part of it, is that you just don't get discouraged. You have to stay in it. The other thing I want to mention about that is, as you were talking about it, it brought up something that a concept that I was introduced to by my co-author of the book I wrote on how to sell art to interior designers. Dick Harrison wrote a blog post for me called something about the JND, and it stands for just noticeable difference. And it's a concept, you can look it up. It's not just something that applies to art. It can apply to all kinds of products, and product manufacturers and marketers take advantage of this all the time. They're trying to look for in a crowded market, let's say for chocolate candy bars or something. Something that gives you just a slight noticeable difference. Maybe not even totally perceptible to the average person, but something that makes that product just a little bit more special. And Dick had a unique experience with this because he had a book of 1,000 designers and other contacts that he met with personally over 20 years during his career as an artist rep, primarily calling on interior designers in Florida. And he would have the opportunity to take work in from his van. He had kind of a traveling museum in his van full of all kinds of artwork, and show it to designers. And he knew what they'd be looking for. They were looking for something floral or seascapes or whatever, so he'd bring in that kind of work, not to bother them with other things. And he said, I almost always knew when I presented the work which ones were going to sell, because over time I began to get a sense for it myself. With some pieces had that JND, like you could put down two seascapes side by side by two artists, both very well done. One had something a little bit more special to it, and I tend to believe it's something that in the last comments I was making, that it comes out of the heart, and it comes out of a way to something that you're doing that's connecting with your potential buyers in an ethereal sort of way. So don't be discouraged, and keep looking for that emotional connection that to add it to your work in a way that other people will buy into it, perceive it, and want to take it home with them, take your art home with them. Is it back to me?
It's back to you.
Okay. If I can stop my thing from scrolling here. Jenny Bate says, hi guys, a bunch of questions. Would you say that tastes are currently trending towards more abstract impressionist than realist? We're getting a lot of trend questions here. Do you see
I think let's skip that one, since I think we've already kind of addressed the general principle behind that one.
Okay. I have the next one here then. James Harris asks, I'm starting to work in a larger format to reach a more affluent customer. Good idea for you, James. How do you determine your target market, and can it change as you progress through your career? In selling work at art shows, would you suggest putting together a small portfolio booklet to hand out to interested customers, since space is limited in a 10 by 10 by 10, and should you include your artist statement or biography? A lot of things to jump on there.
Yeah, 4 questions in one.
First of all, larger formats mean that you're going to be able to get better prices, and I'm all for that. I have the masterpiece theory, and I don't know where I got it from. I stole it from somebody that I came across somewhere on the internet, and that is the idea that you need to make a piece that is your masterpiece. You can have more than one masterpiece. You don't have a lifetime masterpiece. This is your current masterpiece, and it should be larger and more grand than anything else you're doing, and you should display it prominently and be also reluctant to even sell it because you love it so much, and it should be priced a lot higher than everything else in your price line. So by doing that, you take the cap off of your range. Like if your range is, my work typically sells for $800 to $2,000, and now I have this masterpiece over here that's $3,500. You just effectively took your range up $1,500. You may not ever sell it, but you could. I wrote a blog post recently about an artist who wrote to me because I talked about this theory on a previous blog post, and she took the idea to heart and created she was doing $2,000 on average. She created her masterpiece and priced it at $3,900. And a short time later, an interior design firm came in and paid full price for it. Kind of knocked her off her pins a little bit to realize that this is even possible, but she almost doubled her price range overnight, and found that she could actually, that you could sell in that market. So there's that answer, that part of the question. And as far as selling in the shows, why not have an iPad or something, the biggest format tablet that you can get, to bring in all your work to show. That's my opinion. And if you don't have that, yes, a portfolio. And I think you would agree with me, Jason, that including your artist statement or biography is always a good thing, because the more information you can provide somebody, that's more ammunition, more reason to give them why they should buy from you. Maybe give you that JND that you're looking for.
Yeah, I think I would. I'm going to start at the last part of that and then work my way back from there. But I agree as far as the portfolio goes, that having a digital edition, if you can. I think a lot of artists, think, well, if I print some kind of brochure or booklet that I can give out to people, maybe I can show them a bigger version and then give them a booklet. We've stopped doing that in the gallery for one simple reason, and that is that if I give somebody a printed booklet or brochure and they walk out of my gallery with it, the likelihood that I'm ever going to hear from them again is pretty small. So what I would rather have you do is create a portfolio for your iPad, or even if it's a printed version, but I also want to make sure that you have a PDF version of that portfolio or brochure. And when you show it to someone, you can then offer to email it to them if they would like a copy. And of course, the huge advantage of that is that once I have their email address, I can now actively follow up with them, as opposed to just sending it out on a wing and a prayer by giving them a brochure. So what I'm advising artists to do now is to create their portfolio digitally, either using PageMaker, or excuse me, not PageMaker, that doesn't even exist anymore, using something like either, you can even use Word or Google Docs, presentations, PowerPoint, whatever you're most comfortable with. They will all, SlideShare, they'll all have an option to output to PDF. And kind of PDF being as broadly used as it is, that's the one you want to go for. It's easy for everybody to open, and they understand what it is. And so that would allow you to then have a copy on your tablet, or even print a copy through one of the digital printing services, but also then to create a compressed version of it that you can easily email to people, and that's going to be a great way to follow up. And then I'm just going to echo what Barney said about having some large pieces, having some range of size in the work that you're doing. I definitely encourage all the artists that I'm representing in the gallery to have that kind of range if they can. If they're comfortable creating larger pieces. And for all of the reasons that Barney mentioned, giving, it makes your more moderately sized pieces look more reasonable when people see those big ones with the big price tags. But over the last month and a half, we've had a spate of sales of what I would consider to be very large pieces, sculptures and paintings. And if you don't have those in your inventory, when a collector or a potential buyer is out there looking for that big piece for their large new home or their garden or whatever it is, if you don't have those in your portfolio, you're never going to have the chance to sell them. So I think for that reason, and then also just for the stretching and growing that it makes you do to do these larger pieces. So definitely I would encourage that. I've got a question here from Renata, and this is a very short and brief question. This one comes in the Q&A, which you guys can all see on your screens right now, hopefully, and you can type those in live. But her question is, seasonal art, a good or bad decision for a fine artist? I'm going to let you take a crack at that first, Barney, and then I'll take a crack at it.
Well, if you look back at historically, there's plenty of well-known, artists who painted seasonal themes or something that would be seasonal, whether it be Easter or Christmas or what have you. And if you're doing it in the vein of everything else that you're doing, I love the idea of it personally. I have had this thought for a long time that one of the ways to get people to buy more art and overcome the idea of I have my walls are full. If you sell art and in a frame that's easy to change it in and out of the frame, and you can if you use a product called Clippets, and you're selling a 24 by 36, you could sell somebody a winter. Here's a winter scene. Here's a summer scene, and easily get them to switch out the art on the same place on their wall. Maybe I don't want a Santa Claus or a Christmas scene on my wall all year round, but I'm the kind of person who would love to have something like that, and I'm willing to invest in art to do it, to make my home really special. Absolutely. If you know your customer base and can keep faithful to what you're doing, and it doesn't just look like you're trying to totally cash in without any real thought put into it, I'd say go for it 100%.
Yeah, I think it's always, you want to be a little bit careful to walk the fine line between a great idea and a gimmick, and not to have something that feels too gimmicky. But what does that mean? I think that means different things to different people. And I think that as an artist, I would encourage you to paint or sculpt or photograph what inspires you and what's driving your passion in the moment. And of course, you live life season to season, and so it makes sense that during the winter you're going to be focused on things that would have a winter theme. My father, during the fall, it's inevitable that he's going to paint several, at least, large aspen scenes with their full fall colors. Are those seasonal? I mean, they look great year round, but sure, he's inspired by fall. That imagery catches him, and we tend to sell those best during the fall months when people have autumn on their mind. So you want to, the goal should always be to create the highest quality work that you can, to be passionate about what you're creating, and if that it falls in line with creating seasonal work, I would say do that. I just wouldn't be thinking, my driving force wouldn't be to think, oh, it's Christmas in a month, I guess I better start painting some Christmas scenes and sleds and stuff like that. It's paint what's exciting to you, and if it fits into that, then great.
There's a question here. I should probably let you take that. Do you see it? It's the one in your mentorship broadcast on, this is from Thomas Wharton. In your mentorship broadcast on studio practice, you talked about the amount of work you produce per month, year, etc. My style is labor intensive. Would you suggest I mix small with my usual larger work to increase the volume?
Yeah, and I mean, this is something I did talk about this in our mentorship broadcasts, but I talk about this quite extensively in terms of trying to push your production, and I'm going to put the same caveats that I put in my last answer, and that is that you always want to be striving for the best quality that you can. But yes, if you can find ways by varying your style, or not your style, but your sizes and presentation of the work, and that helps you boost your overall productivity, I would encourage you to look for those opportunities. It not only does it help you increase the number of pieces that you're producing, but it does what Barney talked about earlier in terms of giving you a wider range of work. Now, what I will also say, however, is that when I'm thinking about being more productive, I'm not thinking in any kind of absolute terms that you as a painter have to paint X number of pieces per year or you're not going to be successful, or you as a sculptor have to create X number of sculptures per year. That's not at all how I would come at it. And I know some artists who are only creating 4 or 5 pieces per year and are very, very successful. And I know other artists who are producing hundreds of pieces per year and are maybe not as successful. And so it's not the numbers themselves, but instead it's thinking about what you can do to be more productive than you currently are, to push yourself a little bit more, to work a little bit harder. And so I always say, don't think of that absolute number, but think of the number of pieces you produced in the last 12 months. And then set a goal for yourself that's going to challenge you to create more work in the next 12 months. And if you set a goal to increase the number by a quarter, by 25% over the next year, I think that you're going to see some amazing things happen in your career and in your sales.
There's always ways to cut corners without cutting quality. And, perfectionism is the mother of procrastination, or I'm really mashing that quote up from somebody, but the point is that you can just, you know, what was it Da Vinci said, art is never finished, only abandoned. So you have to learn to know when to let go, when good is good enough. And that may be part of the process, and I understand labor intensive is labor intensive, but then the other thing you need to look at is why is it labor intensive, and what steps can you take out of it that you are doing that you don't need to do? You know, there's been time and motion studies. I think I wrote a piece for Art Red Dot blog a couple of years ago on time and motion, how it can make a big difference. Somebody, I was talking about bricklayers earlier, somebody did a time and motion study on bricklayers and found that they got them to be 50% more productive just by changing the way that they went about getting the bricks to the site and picking them up and so forth. So if you're doing something that requires your hands on doing something, it could be as little as Jack White, who's very famous, as what is Mickey Sincaric is his wife, and they've together sold millions of dollars worth of original and print art over the years. And one of the things he taught her when he taught her how to paint was put the colors that you use the most closest to your hand on the palette so that your hand doesn't travel all the way across the palette to get the white if that's what you're using. It may sound ridiculous, but if you do that 1,000 times, you might have saved, you know, 1,000 half seconds or something like that. And if you're doing that, making art over a period of time, very small changes can be incrementally a big deal to help, in conjunction with some of the other things that Jason and I have just said, to get the production up. But you either you got to have big prices or you got to get your production up, or it's not going to work out for you as a full-time job. And we want it to for you.
This next question is coming from Zana Martin. This is on Google+. And she says, in the pre-Christmas season, is this a good time to do some kind of marketing and promotion, or is it better to wait till after the new year since everybody's preoccupied with the holidays now?
That's a really good question. I tend to think you don't put yourself second best to Amazon or Xbox or anything else. I tend to believe you need to have, it can't hurt to build up to do something and have a promotion for it. You know, maybe you do it in a special way so that it's not just, I have no idea and no desire to want to do a Black Friday or Green Monday or Super Saturday sale to, hey, buy my books, just for that reason. Everybody else is already crowding into that space, but there's a lot of time between just before Thanksgiving all the way up to the new year, and even after the new year, to put together a promotion that works for you. So it's too good of a time. There's too much money being spent for you not to be standing on the sidelines.
You know, people are always asking me, my friends and people who maybe don't understand the art business, you know, as well as all of us do, they'll ask me this time of year, oh, I bet you guys are just slammed right now with all the holidays, and you know, this must be a very busy time of year for you. And I have to tell them, actually, it's not as busy as you're thinking it would be, and not for the reasons that you're thinking that it is. You know, to a large extent, art is not the same kind of purchase that everything else is in the holiday season. You know, it's if you think about the engine that gift giving creates for the economy, it's huge, but it's hard for someone to go and spend a couple $1,000s on a piece of artwork to give as a gift when they're not certain that that gift is going to be well received. And so we definitely see you know, quite a slowdown during this season, but there are some exceptions to that, and those exceptions would be important for you as an artist to consider. And that is that if you have some kind of item that is more of a, you know, kind of a gift type item, and you've sold it well in past holiday seasons, that would be the item that I would be potentially promoting during the holidays. And we have some things like that here in the gallery. You know, they tend to be lower price points. They tend to be typically smaller pieces, and so we will do email promotions around those, and we'll be a little bit playful and creative about how we're approaching our wording and the promotion, because again, as Barney said, people are really getting hammered with marketing right now, and so if we can find a way to be a little bit creative, we'll do that. So my response, I guess, would be, Zana, if you've had some kind of item that has sold well in past holiday seasons, go for it, do some promotion. If not, I would maybe save those advertising dollars and look towards a couple of weeks after the new year to start hitting promotion hard again. Again, going from gallery experience, it is typically for us, the art sales will slow down going into December, and then not pick up again in full force until the second week of January or so.
If you had something that was an art experience, like maybe you're taking people on a day trip to museums, or they're going to sit in with you and learn some painting techniques, or whatever it is. If you have something that you're selling that's maybe not necessarily your art, but something that generates income from you, that could be possibly something that's more in the gift line, maybe a little less expensive. And the other thing that came to mind, if you're interested in trying to promote, would be a gift card, because, like Jason said, art is very subjective, and somebody might know that a friend of mine loves this artist, or loves art that's equine art, and you're an equine artist. Maybe you give them a gift card. I don't know. One of those things comes down to.
Yeah, I love that idea. I'm glad you mentioned that, Barney. We don't sell a lot of gift cards or gift certificates. It's not something that we've necessarily pushed. But I think it was last holiday season, or maybe it was even the previous year, we had a couple of young ladies contact us. It actually was an interesting story. They contacted the Gallery Association, the Scottsdale Gallery Association, and then sent an email asking, does anyone sell gift certificates? And our gallery was the only one to respond, or was the only one that responded with any kind of details. And so they ended up buying a couple of, I think it was a total of $500 worth of gift certificates for their parents. Gave them to their parents at Christmas, so keep that in mind, $500. The parents came into the gallery and ended up buying about, as I recall, about $3,500, $4,000 worth of art, and have since bought another probably $8,000 worth of art. So, I think that's a great idea that you mentioned, Barney. And I would, if you've got an opportunity and maybe we may be getting a little close now, but you could do some promotion for gift certificate sales.
I'm seeing a question here from Marion Quick, who wants to know, what is the best time of year to cold call with a portfolio? What time of the day, or what time of the week, and what time of day? Well, just about any time, I would say. You probably agree with that, Jason. You don't want to call during art walk. You probably want to call during a slower time of the day. Galleries are typically not that well trafficked early when they first get open, whether it's 10 or 11 or whatever time they open their doors. So, but that sounds like you're almost, I don't know anything about you, Marion, but don't overanalyze the situation. It's more about the activity than it is trying to dial in. There isn't a perfect scenario. Every gallery you go into is going to be different. So you can't, it's like saying I'm going to do landscapes because they're popular. Just put that stuff out of your mind. It's a distraction to the fact that if you've done your research and you know this gallery is one that is appropriate for your type of work, then get in there midweek, earlier in the day than later. Try to, if you can do some recon, figure out when the gallery owner's going to be in there, then do that. But other than that, just do it and don't worry about it. The activity is more important than dialing it in perfectly in terms of when to go.
Yeah, it's again, we're going to be in almost total agreement. Are there better times of the year to approach galleries? Sure, off season is probably going to be slightly better than on season. Are there better times of the week? Yes, there are quieter times during the week. But as Barney said, if you spend time thinking about that and waiting for the perfect time to appear, you're gonna procrastinate away your opportunities. So, I would only add to what Barney said, that just be very conscious when you're approaching galleries. Is the gallery, do they have some customers there that they need to be talking to? I'm probably going to wait a few minutes and wander around before I try to talk to them, and just be very conscious of the fact that they are going to be, their number one priority is to work with their clientele and try and make sales, and so make sure you don't get in the way of that happening.
You got
And
another one there?
yeah, I've got, and we're quickly running out of time here, but this question comes from Mark, and he asks, how does directly approaching galleries differ when there's an artist representative in the mix? Mark is working with an artist, and he says that, well, let me just read what he said. He represents himself well as an artist, but is not organized to follow up. Should we both go, or should he alone go and I follow up? So, and this is a kind of a great follow-up to the last question. We didn't plan it this way, but when you've got someone in the mix with you as an artist, be it a representative or a spouse, I always recommend that, yes, the artist, if possible, should be present. The whole goal in meeting with gallery owners and with collectors, for that matter, is to start to generate and engender a relationship with the artist. I don't mean to take the excitement and the thrill out of being a representative for an artist, but people don't really care about you that much. What they care about is the artist and the person who created. They want to hear their story. And so if you can introduce the artist to the gallery owner, to the collector, and let them start to meet them, and then you, like you say, you do what you're best at, which is the follow-up and the keeping it organized, that's going to be a powerful opportunity to present the work to galleries. So yeah, the short answer is, if you can do it together, and then you do the follow-up, I think you're going to be best served.
I agree. In general, in the galleries I worked in, gallery reps were not necessarily the most warmly welcomed, because they added, in many cases, another layer of dimension in terms of how things are going to be split and who's responsible for who we're, so on and so forth. So if you can keep it clear in terms of and it's great that the artist wants to get involved, because a lot of times artists want an artist rep because they're introverted or shy or whatever, and they don't want to get out and meet the public or meet a gallery owner. So if their artist is willing to get in and see the gallery owner, that's a great thing. And if you then establish yourself as that professional person who's representing the artist, but make it aware that the artist isn't completely incommunicado, I think that'll work out for you. Better than just walking in cold and you're the artist rep and here's an artist that you're not going to get to meet personally. So you got a better situation going on there than you would otherwise. I see a question here. I just want to answer it, Jason. It's from Hazelstone. It doesn't nothing to do with the art business, but I saw it and something came into my mind immediately. What painting or work of art has stayed in your memory to inspire or comfort you? And to me, it's Constantine Brancusi's The Muse, or maybe it's The Sleeping Muse. It's a sculpture, and it's a very simplistic sculpture. The head is laying as if it were on its side, and I don't know, there's something of it. We're talking, as I mentioned earlier, several times about making a connection with your potential buyer or fan or follower. There's something I love about, there's something Zen-like about that piece of work that it just makes me feel good to look at it. I'd love to own one, and I'll shoot you one of Brancusi's he was pretty well known and pretty prolific quote maker. One of my favorite from him is, "It's one thing to see far; it's another thing to go there." So, the art lover that you are, I don't know if you can answer that question with one piece of art, can you?
No way. I could answer it with 1,000 pieces of artwork, but
Just scroll through
to
the
try and get me to
libros.
go one, yeah, no, I'm not even gonna even start that one.
Okay.
Let's.
Um,
I've got one here that's a pricing question, and we've done a couple of broadcasts on pricing in the past, but I think there's some things that we can dive into here. And this question comes from Maggie. She asks, as an emerging artist, I've priced my art very reasonably. I've recently joined a couple of galleries and have had mild success. Is there a rule of thumb for raising prices? Maybe I'll let you dive at that one first, Barney.
well, you just can't be ridiculous. Other than that, I don't think so. It is definitely a situation of what the market will bear. I tend to think many artists, especially emerging artists, want to go too high or too low. They see that what they think, I'm just as good as this well-known, very established artist, therefore I should get 90% of or 100% equal price, or I'm not, nobody knows me at all, and therefore I'm going to be in the 10 or 20% of that price. It's the Goldilocks theory. You want to be in that just not too hot, not too cold, just right. It requires a lot of research, and I will say this: you do need to figure out ways to exponentially raise your prices, because if you're making $25,000 a year and you want to raise to get to say 100,000, if you increase your prices 10% a year over 15 years, you might make it, but you need to find a way to leverage, get your prices higher, faster, and with greater numbers than just a 10% annual increase, especially if you're at the lower end of the price range. How you do that, it's tricky, and there is no set guaranteed, here's follow A, B, C, D, but it can be done. You need to be smart and aggressive in the way you go about it, and look for every opportunity to raise your rates without raising the ire of those people who are bought from you in the past and may be willing to buy from you again in the future.
Yeah, it's I mean, it's kind of the same process of pricing and raising prices that any product is going to go through, and that is that you have to, if sales are good and you can't keep up with the demand for your work, that's the indication that you need to start raising your prices, and you don't want to raise them so high that suddenly you cut off sales and you're suddenly stuck with a lot of inventory. And so it is a little bit of a delicate balance, and there are a lot of variables that go into it in terms of I'm going to be raising my prices, but I'm also trying to expand to get into some other markets, and that may, maybe my artwork is selling in my local market at one price, but if I'm looking to get into a Scottsdale or a Santa Fe, I'm going to need to raise my prices significantly. So that can be a factor in your pricing as well. I think it's a reasonable starting point to at least once a year be thinking about analyzing my sales and asking yourself, is it time for a price increase? Have my sales been decent, and does there seem to be a steady demand for my work? And even though I agree with what Barney was saying, that if you're only going to be raising by 10 or 15% per year, it's going to take potentially forever to get the prices high enough that they are where you want them to be. But on the other hand, thinking that at least every year I'm going to be thinking about a 10 to 15% increase. And then if my sales really start to take off, then I'll stop and analyze and say maybe this year I'm going to have two 15% increases, one in January and one in June. I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea to be at least thinking in a kind of formal structure about your upcoming price increases and having some goals there. But then just build into that a mechanism where you say, okay, my sales are going really strong this year, I can bump it up a little bit, or sales have slowed down a little bit, I'm not going to be quite as aggressive about my price increases.
Robert Ginn always published his. He's famous, passed away recently, too soon. The Painters Weekly or twice weekly Painters Keys twice weekly newsletter, and he talked about publishing prices, and so he was very upfront with it, and he raised his prices every, I think, May 1st. You can go look on his website if you want to, and there's a blog post about it. And he used that as a wedge to sell more art. Like, if you've been thinking about buying my art, everything in my inventory is going up on May 1st. He usually went 10%, but he was already at a pretty good price point, so it didn't matter for him. You just need to find. The one thing I liked about that was he was consistent and transparent, and it gave people an opportunity to get at a better price because he told them in advance. They weren't shell-shocked by, oh, why didn't you let me know? I did, in fact. You could have bought that last month for 10% less. So I know you have to go, Jason, right?
Yeah, we've burned our
clock.
time, and I am on the clock this evening with another engagement, so we're going to have to call it a night again, and I know we've got a lot of questions here that we couldn't get to, but we usually will try and take as many of those questions as we can and trickle them out, maybe responding to them in blog posts or even right on Google+. So we'll try and do that again this time around, and then of course we're always back again next month for another broadcast, and we'll get to more of your questions. I'm excited. We've got some plans this coming year to in addition to the broadcasts that we're doing, to expand that a little bit. So we'll be talking about that after the first of the year. And I think that as we come to the end of this year, we can all look back with some real gratitude for the success that we've seen this year. As the art market continues to come back around and grow. A lot of the artists that I'm talking to have had their best year since since 2007, 2008. And we've certainly had a great year this year, and I'm very excited about the upcoming year. So I think there's a lot to be positive about as we come into the holiday season and into the new year, and I hope that you're all setting goals and making plans to really push forward and to build some great success in this upcoming year, and we're looking forward to following along with you and hopefully helping along the way and pushing forward.
I want to wish you a happy holiday, Jason.
Right back at you.
And of course to everyone listening, the same thing. I hope this holiday season is wonderful and blessed and happy for you, and that the new year's prosperous and your best year 2015. I just love for everybody listening to 2015 to be the one that rocked it, that you saw that exponential growth in sales and prices going up. It's totally possible. Keeping that positive attitude and keep working for it, and let us help you. If you see on the bottom of my screen there, it says barneydavey.com, or pardon me, x.co/art survey. That survey is going to help us know where you feel like you need the most help, and that's one of the things we're going to use that to try to concentrate more of our broadcast and everything else we're doing to help you. So let us know. Take that survey, x.co/art survey. We'll publish the results so you can see how other artists are doing, and if your concerns are similar to what other artists are experiencing. And we'll use it to dial in some of these future broadcasts to make sure that we're addressing the things that you need the most help with.
Awesome, Barney. Well, thank you, and thanks to everyone for joining us this evening. If you enjoyed this broadcast and found the information to be helpful, we hope you'll take a few moments to share the YouTube video. You'll see a share link at the bottom of the YouTube video, or if you go to our blogs in the next couple of days, we'll post this as well. But we appreciate you passing it along to your artist friends and sharing it on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, whatever your favorite social media is. We look forward to seeing you all again here next month, and hope you all have a very happy holidays and happy new year. Thanks, Barney.
You're welcome, Jason. Peace out.